Happy Friday, folks. Senior Editor Mackenzie DeLulo here, and welcome back to the Texans Weekly Roundup podcast. Ken Paxton reportedly being on the Texas House impeachment team's witness list in his upcoming trial. Governor Greg Abbott speaking on the southern border with governors of 4 other states. A former appeals court judge declining an offer to help Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick preside over the Paxton impeachment trial. Austin's chief of police announcing his retirement just 2 years after he entered the role. Tickets being required for members of the public to sit in on Paxton's impeachment trial. Planned Parenthood facing a Medicaid fraud lawsuit that could cost the organization $1.8 billion. Conroe ISD voters facing a $2 billion bond for schools, renovations, and tech on their November ballot. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals reviving a Texas bar disciplinary action against the first Assistant Attorney General. The Republicans' drag parody Instagram account putting up a billboard in Austin to protest the state's drag ban. The Texas Young Republicans disassociating from the state GOP over comments from Chairman Matt Rinaldi. A man sued over his Facebook comment criticizing a teacher advising students to call pedophiles minor attracted persons. The South Texas Cleburne County attorney leaving the Democrats to join the GOP. And the Texas A&M system announcing its new $200 million Space Institute. As always, if you have questions for our team, DM us on Twitter or email us at editor@thetexan.news. We'd love to answer your questions on a future podcast. Thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Howdy, folks. Mackenzie here with Brad, Cameron, Rob, and Hayden. I pressed record, so all the gentlemen in this room have to behave themselves now. That is completely my goal here, is just to make everyone behave themselves. They're feeling a little frisky. They're feeling their oats today.
All I said was a very commonly believed conspiracy theories slogan. That's it. That's
all he said. Very commonly believed.
Yes.
Very commonly. One which we will not broach on this podcast. How are you guys doing today? Hayden, how are you?
That is a loaded question.
Your eyes look a little teary. Is it from all the laughter? Or are you crying for Brad's soul?
Wow. Okay. Probably necessary.
Yeah, a little bit.
You did say before the podcast that Brad and I are brothers now, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so you guys...
That's a new development.
You guys bicker or just know each other like brothers sometimes?
How do you feel being related to me, Brad? It's kind of a shock, isn't it?
I call the top bunk. There's gonna be so much room for activities.
Hayden would give Brad the top bunk too.
I would. I don't want to be on the top bunk.
Fine.
Because I had a top bunk bed only when I was little. And
been there, done that.
My dad built a railing so that I wouldn't roll over and fall off of it, which was a real possibility. Because at times I would wake up right next to the railing. So if the railing hadn't been there, I would have fallen 100 feet to the floor.
It's how it feels.
Well, when you're 7 and you're in the top bunk, it feels like 100 feet.
Proportionally, it probably is.
I also had a bunk bed, but my family eventually got rid of that bunk bed after I once leaned over and hit my head on the ceiling fan. I actually got slapped by the ceiling fan, so I still have a scar right here on my forehead.
No way.
Wow.
I see it. That's crazy.
There you go.
I feel like the top bunk, I was a top bunk kid too, and you'd have to slide under the ceiling fan to get out and go down the ladder. That's at least how our bedroom was built. Took a lot of skill, and definitely got whacked by a ceiling fan a time or two, but I don't have a scar to show for it. So Rob, you're killing it. Okay, folks, before we jump into the news today, I do want to plug a new podcast that we are launching here at the Texan. As you guys know, we've spoken at length about the impeachment trial, the Paxton impeachment trial that will be happening in the Senate in a few weeks here, or 2 weeks actually, September 5th.
11 days.
We will be launching a daily podcast entitled Inside the Impeachment, the Paxton Trial, and we'll be launching it in the days leading up to the trial as well. So we will have 3 preliminary episodes leading up to September 5th. Hayden and I will be chatting through all the details. The first episode will be the whistleblower allegations, detailing all the spicy, insane details of the whistleblower allegations that started this whole thing. We'll also have another episode on the legal battles over those whistleblower lawsuits and the settlement. And then finally, the impeachment and political response will be our 3rd preliminary episode before we start recording daily on September 5th. Brad Johnson and Matt Stringer will be joining me every day, and Hayden will join when he's available, as well as other members of the team, since Hayden will be in the Senate following the trial firsthand. So just be on the lookout for that. Inside the Impeachment, the Paxton trial launching on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. Hayden, I'm excited. We're gonna record our first episode this afternoon.
We are.
No pressure on us.
We're going to unpack when this all began.
This is like the closest to the true crime podcast that we've talked about before that we'll ever get to launch.
We've always wanted to do a true crime podcast.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, we started watching The Pharmacist that you mentioned the other day.
That documentary will freak you right out.
I will say I did tune it out halfway through and just start doing things around the house, but it was pretty wild.
It's one of those documentaries too that you have to watch all 4 episodes in one sitting, or at least I did. Not necessarily in one sitting, but at least in a couple days, because each episode ends with a huge cliffhanger.
Huge revelation. It's very true. But folks, we really just want to make sure you're aware that also this podcast will be in the feed where you currently are enjoying our content. So there'll be a lot more content in the feed. Bear with us throughout the entirety of the trial. We'll just be publishing a lot and detailing everything that's going on each day. It will kind of serve as a debrief of each day's happenings, what happens on the Senate floor, the witnesses at hand, any of the spicy political responses. All of it will be debriefing as a team. Occasionally we'll have guests on as well to break down some of the legal intricacies. So make sure to join us. It's going to be awesome. Hayden, we're going to start with you talking about the news here, and specifically, of course, Paxton's write-up. A confidential document was leaked to the media this week that gave us a preview of the impeachment trial. What was in the document?
Due to the gag order, a lot of the details of this upcoming impeachment proceeding have been shrouded in mystery because none of the parties are allowed to speak about it. But occasionally, documents and other quotes get leaked to the media, and the Dallas Morning News was able to acquire a copy of the witness lists for each side. These are not necessarily guarantees of who will show up, but these are the names that were put out there. Ken Paxton is on the House impeachment side's witness list, and he, of course, has said he does not want to testify at this impeachment trial. But the House managers presenting this impeachment case in the Senate say that he is bound to do this, and that because it is not necessarily a criminal proceeding, he doesn't have the right to just not show up. Although the Senate rules contemplate the possibility that he will not be there, because it says if he does not personally appear and plead not guilty, that the trial will proceed as though he entered a plea of not guilty on each of the articles of impeachment. Ken Paxton's testimony would be a huge deal if he were to speak about these charges, although he would likely invoke the Fifth Amendment because, bear in mind, he is facing criminal allegations. But the impeachment team witnesses, according to the Dallas paper, include Nate Paul, that is the real estate developer that he is accused of, from whom he is accused of accepting bribes, Collin County District Attorney Greg Cox, a friend of Paxton's, and former Travis County DA Margaret Moore. And without unpacking all of it, Moore is involved in this because her office was asked by the AOG to investigate allegations by Nate Paul. Possible witnesses for the defense could be Senator Brian Hughes, former Land Commissioner George P. Bush, former Texas Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman, the Texans for Lawsuit Reform organization, and its founder, Dick Weekly. Also, the Dallas paper mentioned that the whistleblowers, as they are referred to by Paxton's accusers, are on the lists for both sides. So that's a preview of who could be waiting to testify here in less than 2 weeks.
Important also to note that Bush and Guzman are, of course, former primary opponents to the Attorney General as well. How has Ken Paxton's team preempted attempts to call him to testify?
Paxton's lawyers have argued in court documents that this is a criminal proceeding and he is therefore entitled to all of the rights that a criminal defendant would have. However, this is taking place in the legislature, and it is not a criminal trial in the sense that the Senate cannot impose any criminal sanctions. It is not able to sentence him to imprisonment or impose any type of fine. The only authority the Senate has over Paxton is to remove him from office by sustaining the articles of impeachment and then voting separately to permanently bar him from ever holding office again. However, Paxton's attorneys, as I mentioned, say that this is a criminal proceeding and he cannot be compelled to testify. Busby, Tony Busby, one of Paxton's lawyers, said that he would not dignify the proceeding by showing up to testify. And that's something that he said earlier this month. I should also mention that another witness that has been floated as a possible witness, and I believe is on the impeachment team's list of witnesses, is Laura Olson, the woman with whom Paxton is accused of having an affair. And the reason that her testimony would be relevant is the bribes that Nate Paul allegedly offered to Paxton included an employment offer for Laura Olson as part of covering up this affair. So her testimony would be relevant, and she is reportedly on the witness list for the impeachment side.
Crazy stuff, Hayden. Thank you so much. Rob, you are covering Matt's stories for him today on the podcast. Let's jump into this. Governor Abbott met with 4 other state governors this week on Texas's southern border. Who were those governors?
So those governors were South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, and Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, all of whom are Republicans like Abbott. All of them have contributed resources from their states to Operation Lone Star, and that includes National Guard troops and state law enforcement.
So what do they have to talk about at the border?
So Abbott said that the Biden administration is mishandling the border, including he commented that one infant died, actually drowning in the Rio Grande, before the buoy barrier system was put in place. This buoy barrier system has been a source of recent political controversy after a body was found in the barrier system. Some people believe that they had drowned because of it. Others said that the body, I believe, had actually washed there from upstream. But Abbott was saying that this dead infant did not garner any attention from the administration before the barrier system was put in place. The other governors also blamed Biden, saying that Mexican cartels are taking advantage of the situation to conduct drug smuggling and human smuggling through the border, with a few claiming that drug crimes are rising in their states due to the border crisis. Stitt of Oklahoma said that the new Biden administration policies allowing anyone who makes it across the river to be processed and released by federal immigration authorities were what prompted Abbott's response in deploying the buoy barrier system.
Absolutely. Definitely go read Matt Stringer's coverage at the Texan. And Rob, thanks for covering for him today.
Hey, I can do it, but I can't do it justice.
Your favorite line. Hayden, coming back to you, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick appointed a former appeals court justice to assist during the impeachment trial, but he declined the position. Why did he decline?
Former Justice Mark Brown said that he could not serve as Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's right-hand man during the impeachment trial. But let's go back to when Patrick initially appointed him. Patrick said, quote, "I was looking for a candidate with real-life courtroom experience as a lawyer and a judge who would serve as counsel and work side by side with me through this process," end quote. Patrick said that in a news release announcing the appointment of former Justice Brown to this position. However, only a day later, Justice Brown authored a public letter to Patrick, saying that he could not accept the appointment. He had made it through the vetting process for this appointment, but then remembered that he and his wife had made a $250 political contribution in November 2021 to former Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman. If you'll remember, Guzman was one of Paxton's primary opponents during the 2022 Republican primary. She did not make it to the runoff, and the runoff was between George P. Bush and Paxton. But that small political contribution, and honestly, in the world of campaign donations, $250 is nothing. But Justice Brown believed it could impair the perception of this proceeding as a fair and impartial proceeding. Justice Brown said, quote, "I have full confidence in my ability to fairly offer legal advice in this matter. However, the proceedings commencing on September 5th, 2023 are far too important to the state of Texas for there to be any distractions involving allegations of favoritism or personal bias on my part," end quote.
So what are some of the Senate rules that serve as the backdrop of this?
The Senate rules here that are relevant empower Patrick to appoint someone to advise him during this trial. And it's exactly someone like Brown. Brown was a state district judge, and he served as a justice on the 14th Court of Appeals. The rules stipulate that the person cannot be in an imminent campaign cycle. The rules state, quote, The president of the Senate or a member of the Senate designated by the president serves as the presiding officer of the court. In addition, the president of the Senate may appoint a jurist who shall not run for election in the 2024 election cycle to serve as the presiding officer of the court. End quote. Patrick is invoking his constitutional authority under the rules to make this appointment when he did. However, Justice Brown has declined the appointment, so next step would be for Patrick to choose someone else, or we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he doesn't have too much time to get that vetting process done and choose another person, so we'll see who he or what happens. It'll be fascinating. Hayden, thank you. Brad, coming to you. After a brief 2 years in the position, Austin's police chief will soon be departing. Man, I hope I can get the words out. Give us those details.
It is a tongue twister, as it were. Gosh. APD Chief Joseph Chacon announced this week that he will be stepping down from his post, retiring from the department after 2 years in the position and 25 years at APD. He said, quote, "Working at APD has been the privilege of my life. Being the chief of police is something that I never thought would have been possible, and it has been the pinnacle of my career." Chacon took over for former Chief Brian Manley after he retired in 2021, following a crazy string of events and the fallout from the 2020 protests turned riots. Chacon's retirement will be effective in the first week of September. APD Chief of Staff Robin Henderson will serve as interim chief, and the city and its city manager Jose Garza will start looking for the next. They'll do probably a national search, kind of how they did last time when they eventually selected Chacon, even though that was an in-house hire. But they are going to probably start that soon, and based on the last one, took about 6 months.
Give us the broader context of this resignation.
So APD is amidst a staffing crisis, and along with the impasse over a new labor contract. We covered that a lot earlier this year when it was really at its height, but the city and the Austin Police Union did not agree on a new contract. The old city manager announced an agreement with the union for a 4-year contract. The city, Mayor Kirk Watson, kind of reneged on that and offered a 1-year extension. The union did not agree to that. Now, employment of the city's officers is under state code, chapter 143, I think it is. And so there's that going on while there's a staffing hemorrhage going on. As of March, the department had lost 89 officers this year to early retirement or other departures, otherwise leaving for another department. That was down 300 officers from its 2019 level. I don't have the exact numbers now, but it has only increased. So as far as departures, they have supplemented it with new cadet classes, but those are green recruits. That's not experienced officers that they're losing. So it's causing an issue, and there's a lot of the 911 response times are very high. The ability to respond to emergency situations is limited. It's kind of a mess, and there really appears to be no light at the end of the tunnel. Whoever takes this new job is going to have quite a problem on their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to correct myself earlier. I said resignation instead of retirement. So to be clear, he's retiring. He's not resigning. Hayden, coming back to you. The Texas Senate recently announced some ground rules for public attendance at the impeachment trial. Give us an outline of those rules.
The Texas Senate announced a few ground rules for the impeachment trial and the public attendance. Tickets will be required to get into the Senate gallery. I will say up front that these rules do not mention any cost for these tickets, but there will be tickets for the morning session and the afternoon session on each day. Tickets will begin distribution at 7:30 a.m. each day and then will end, according to these rules, when the tickets are depleted. It's on a first-come, first-served basis. Tickets will become available for the afternoon session 45 minutes before the Senate gallery doors open. And according to this distribution, gallery doors will open at 8 o'clock each morning. And as we mentioned before, the Senate trial is supposed to begin at 9 a.m. on that first day. But trials are wildly unpredictable. We don't know what kind of sidebar conferences they'll want to have. We don't know if there will be delays. But these are this is the basic framework that is being put out there for attendance by the public. And if you are at the impeachment trial and you have your ticket, make sure and hold on to it, because they will require it to re-enter. So if you have to leave to use the restroom, or if you have to leave for a snack or something, you'll have that ticket before you go back in. And then there will obviously be basic decorum required in the chamber. These rules specifically say that cell phones and related electronic devices have to be off or on vibrate. No cameras, no games, no outbursts. And the rules also say there can be no talking, clapping, or demonstrations. So basically, the Senate is saying if you want to attend, you need to get a ticket and then sit quietly throughout the proceedings. And those are the rules according to the Texas Senate.
And this is new guidance that we received this week. What did the original Senate rules say about public attendance?
Well, the original Senate rules were not too specific. They generally require that it is to be a public proceeding, and the bailiff, as he is called, is to maximize the amount of people who are able to attend. And the bailiff, of course, is going to be the sergeant at arms, but we're using all of this courtroom terminology because for these purposes, the Senate is sitting as a court of impeachment, but this is not a court at law. This is a novel situation, and in the modern era, we have not had an impeachment like this, and many people have an interest in the outcome of this proceeding. So the rules contemplate a lot of people showing up to attend, and this process seems to indicate that the Senate is hoping for an orderly and peaceful attendance by the public and a fair way to make sure as many people are able to go to this trial as possible.
And we're even a little bit curious about, okay, what are the press rules going to be? Like, there are so many things we don't know about the day-to-day proceedings once this trial actually gets off the ground. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye out for what will actually be the case and what photos can be taken and whether Hayden can have his laptop in the gallery. He might have a little Etch-a-Sketch or something, which is, I think, Matt Stringer's preference. He loves an Etch-a-Sketch. Okay. Thank you, Hayden, for your coverage. Cameron, we're coming to you next. A Medicaid lawsuit could have a lasting impact on Planned Parenthood. Give us the details.
Yeah, so the OAG, the Office of the Attorney General, has filed a lawsuit accusing Planned Parenthood of defrauding over $10 million in Medicaid funds. And with fines and penalties that could stack up in the lawsuit based on the ruling, it could cost Planned Parenthood up to $1.8 billion. And as I was looking through this, there was a comment I thought was very interesting, and it was actually from Vox.com, and they said it's more than enough to bankrupt Planned Parenthood. And this was heard on August 15th, and the case was actually heard in the U.S. District Court of Judge Matthew Kaczmarek. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, Eric. Kaczmarek.
You're pretty darn close. You were closer than I would have been.
Well, he has an interesting track record of being very pro-life in many of his rulings. And so he hasn't yet made a ruling on this, but we'll be following it. One other interesting thing that I thought I could bring up was some of the things that have been said from the OAG's office and Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood said it's meritless, it's politically motivated. They said unequivocally that this lawsuit has no basis in fact, that it's an abuse of power. But the OAG, who is arguing that in 2016, once Planned Parenthood was moved off of the Texas Medicaid program, they continued to collect Medicaid funds. So they're arguing that Planned Parenthood committed violations of the Federal False Claims Act. Planned Parenthood has stated that there's a subjective belief, nor did they have an objective reason to believe they would be required to repay amounts they received in this period of 2016 to where we are now. So this is very interesting in terms of the sheer amount of money that this could cost Planned Parenthood, and the fact that there's no ruling yet, and the after effects could have a nationwide effect on this Planned Parenthood organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Cameron, thank you so much for your coverage. Bradley, Conroe ISD is asking voters to approve a $2 billion bond package this November. Give us the breakdown.
The package includes 4 items. They are Proposition A $1.82 billion for 8 schools and renovations at multiple others. Proposition B, $40 million for technology devices. Proposition C, $112.8 million for 16 elementary gyms and physical education classrooms. And then Prop D, $22.9 million for an outdoor pool next to the district's current natatorium. That's what voters will see on their ballot.
I was texting.
I could tell.
Yeah, okay.
I tried to string it out for you so you had time to finish, and then you continued texting.
I didn't. Brad, I'm just going to ask you a question now.
Oh, sure.
I have a burning question for you.
Yeah.
How will this affect tax bills?
I'm glad you asked.
Thank you, Bradley.
I was not expecting that. Yeah. So if the whole Conroe ISD bond package passes and then voters approve the statewide $13 billion tax relief propositions from the legislature, the average homeowner in Montgomery County in the district whose property is valued at roughly $386,000 would see their property tax bill drop by $438. So that includes the increase from the bond and the decrease from the tax relief bill. Should the local propositions all fail, thus triggering the voter approval rate, that decrease for the average homeowner would be $875 on the school portion of their tax bill. Had the no new revenue rate been adopted, that decrease would be $750. For some reason, and I haven't been able to figure out exactly why, various weird factors, but in here, the voter approval rate is less than the no new revenue rate, which doesn't make much sense because the no new revenue rate, by and large, is supposed to be the lower of the two. But for some weird reason here, that's the case. Most people don't care about that at all, but for the tax nerds, that is something very odd and interesting that I came across during this. So, without the legislature's reform, the average taxpayer would see a roughly $600 increase in their bill due to the bond package. So, that is what effectively this bond would bring about. It's because of the tax relief from the legislature that people are going to see a significant decrease. So, the delta between the tax rate with the bond and the voter approval rate comes out to $540. It's a lot of numbers.
For an average homeowner. For
an average homeowner in Montgomery County in Conroe ISD. So, messages, if you pass this, the decrease from the property tax relief will be less than what it otherwise would. But the school district feels it's necessary to build new schools and adjust for population growth, mainly.
Got it. Well, I do want to say you called yourself a tax nerd earlier. You referenced, I think it was chapter 143 of Code when you were talking about the APD story.
Yeah.
I just want to say that you did reference like a section of Code on the podcast, a specific chapter.
You really did.
Yeah. So I just think I almost let it go.
Well, all the cops know that section of Code, so it's not just me.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
So if there are any police listening to this, they will know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't make so much fun of you.
You know, that might be recommended, yes.
Okay. Rob, we're coming to you. This lawsuit against First Assistant Attorney General Brent Webster was dismissed last year. Why is it being revived? Give us the details of Matt's story.
Well, I'm very glad you asked. Williamson County District Judge John Youngblood found that the suit violated the separation of powers doctrine and other provisions in the U.S. Constitution, but the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals has overturned that and returned the suit back to district court. It will stay there in Williamson County unless Webster appeals to the Texas Supreme Court.
So where did this lawsuit originate?
Well, in 2020, Webster filed a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court contesting the 2020 election results in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, saying that the court should prevent those states from certifying the election because of what he claimed were recent unconstitutional changes to those states' election procedures. The State Bar of Texas's Commission for Lawyer Discipline, which, sort of oversees lawyers as they practice, filed a petition against Webster saying he made untrue claims about the voting procedures. They were seeking at least a reprimand and possibly at most to revoke his license to practice law. During the 88th regular legislative session, Senator Brian Hughes filed Senate Bill 559 to prevent the Texas bar from, quote, discriminating against attorneys based on those attorneys' viewpoints and expressions. But that bill failed to pass the Texas House. So the lawsuit, it seems, is going to end up right back in Williamson County, and we'll see where it goes from there. I know Matt was very excited about this story.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely keep an eye on it. It's more just AG adjacent news. Pretty wild. Thank you for your coverage. You guys are really hammering these stories home today, and we're making very quick headway through the docket. So this is me stalling.
This is a very professional operation.
Also, I do want to say that my text earlier was a professional text. I was just trying to get some scuttlebutt on something.
Mac, Taylor Swift references are not professional texts. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what she was texting about.
I was trying to get more.
Sorry, it was Taylor Swift something.
It was not. It was I'm trying to get scuttlebutt on the Texas YR's Texas GOP divide.
Why are you... Mac just made wings like she was about to fly somewhere.
I had to think. Of what I was saying. Oh, that's not enough scuttlebutt. Okay, I'll come back to it. I'll try and get it later. Cameron.
Yes.
We're coming to you.
Okay.
An Instagram account that posts AI-generated images of Republicans in drag, this is real, is now purchasing or planning on purchasing a billboard in Texas. Tell us what is happening here.
Yeah, so I came across this story this week. I thought it was hilarious. And it's this account on Instagram called RuPublicans, named after RuPaul's Drag Race. And what they do, like you said, they make AI-generated images of Republican lawmakers, celebrities in drag, hyper-feminized makeup and dresses and heels, all this. And they've garnered over $15,000 in donations on GoFundMe for this billboard. They're going to put it up in Austin, and they're saying it's in protest to the SB 12 law, which is set to go into effect on September 1st. And SB 12 will ban sexually oriented performances in front of children. And what they said is that the law will fuel violence against the drag community. Going through the account, though, it's interesting. Because they have images of Greg Abbott, Ted Cruz. The funniest one was probably Mike Pence, because they have him in these dresses, but they don't put any makeup on him in the images.
On Mike Pence?
On Mike Pence.
Really?
So it's just him with his very stoic, stern face, but in a giant, poofy pink dress. So it's actually...
Doesn't quite match.
No.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're going to put it up before SB 12 is going to go into effect. So they said they're going to put up on August 28th. And the billboard, from what they posted, is the billboard is going to read, "Mind your wigs, not our gigs, Greg." So obviously a shot at Greg Abbott with that slogan. But, this is just one of those funny stories you come across. And one other thing I wanted to touch on about this is, there's actually a lawsuit going on with SB 12. The ACLU of Texas has filed a lawsuit on behalf of a group of plaintiffs that allege SB 12 is unconstitutional and violates the First and the 14th Amendment. And so there is a legal case going on right now. There's attempts for public pressure from some of these activist groups and Instagram accounts. So SB 12 is far from being done, being talked about. So we'll, if this billboard does go up, I'm gonna go check it out. I'll see, and maybe I'll post a photo on Twitter.
Yeah, you totally should. Totally should. Thank you, Cameron. Brad, we're coming to you. Over the weekend, an auxiliary group of the Texas GOP voted to disassociate from the state party. I teased this a little bit earlier, accidentally. What happened?
Thanks for stealing my thunder on that.
Yeah.
At the National Organizations Conference in Dallas, the Texas Young Republican Federation passed a resolution overwhelmingly to rescind its partner member status with the Republican Party of Texas. In its resolution, it cited various grievances specifically against Texas GOP Chair Matt Rinaldi. A statement from the org read, "The Federation's relationship with the RPT was strained after RPT Chairman Matt Rinaldi initiated a smear campaign against Hayden Paget, the former Texas Young Republican Chairman and the Texas Young Republican Federation's endorsed candidate for the chair of the National Federation. These actions, combined with his choice to endorse a candidate with beliefs contrary to the principles of the Texas Republican Party, has cast a shadow over the RPT. At issue is Rinaldi's endorsement of Jesse Blakely, one of the two candidates for the YRNF chairmanship. She is from Virginia. The other candidate, as mentioned, was Hayden Paget. He was endorsed by the Texas Federation. He's a Texan from Collin County. He finished third in the HD 70 primary in 2022. Paget ended up winning the contest by a large margin, but that is the reason for this decision.
So then what did Rinaldi say of this news?
Rinaldi said, quote, "The whereas clauses are hilarious. My some involvement in this race was to sign a letter and to record a 30-second video for my preferred candidate during the one event I attended by invite for 45 minutes. No texts, no communications, no negative messages about any candidate. I've seriously never seen such an unhinged temper tantrum from a winning team." He then posted a picture of the letter he wrote that just went out asking delegates to support Blakely. Now, responding to that, to a previous comment, but similar comment made by Rinaldi, Derek Wilson, a Fort Worth activist and the newly elected chair of the Texas YRs, posted a screenshot of a text message sent by Rinaldi that read, quote, "Send me like 2 or 3 things that are the best dirt you have on Hayden Paget. Like the Black Lives Matter video, I have a lot of angry young Republicans today." You can read more details, and I link to the video, a question there, and I run through the kind of background feud that this is not necessarily caused solely by, but definitely part of. But as with any political party, there's going to be rifts caused by differences of opinion on things. This just happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back on this one aspect. This text and the endorsement were the onus for the Texas YR's decision to leave its affiliation with the Texas GOP. But it is certainly causing quite a stir within the Republican Party circles, now with the state chairman at odds with a large segment of its young activists.
Yeah, big time. Now I'm texting Hayden. Yeah, I'm texting you. A statement came out from TLR, which you may have gotten, but I just texted you. Okay.
And see, that was confusing because one of the characters in the story we just discussed,
yes,
also is named Hayden. So
that's right.
I was a bit confused.
Yeah, I didn't mean to confuse you entirely, but I just messaged you.
I'm easily confused, Mac.
That's okay.
You should know this after almost 4 years of working with me, that my brain is very small.
It's literally the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Okay, Cameron, coming to you next. Very crazy story. A video came out last year that showed a teacher making some very questionable comments here in Texas. Tell us about some of the fallout and give us a rundown of what happened.
Yeah, so like you said, the video came out in September 2022, and the teacher from Franklin High School in El Paso, the teacher was caught on video saying not to judge people just because they want to have sex with 5-year-olds. So not great. They also said to label those pedophiles as MAPs, minor attracted persons. So this video began circulating online. The school board launched an investigation. The teacher ended up being fired. And there was a lot of independent reporting going on about the event. And it was being posted online, which, of course, garnered notable feedback, lots of outrage from people. I had a chance to go back through and look through a lot of the comments, and many people were echoing the same things discussed in what was being said, and understandably so. Well, one person in that comment section is now being sued for those comments. And what is interesting is that the comment that this man is being sued over wasn't on the actual video. It was actually on reporting that was being done about a few different issues, the video just being one portion of that reporting. And so the teacher is actually the one suing for defamation, saying that the comment caused emotional distress. And so the lawsuit, the letter notifying this man of the lawsuit actually said there's going to be numerous individuals that are going to be sent these defamation lawsuits. So this is just one so far that we know about. I will continue monitoring the situation and seeing how things work out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Cameron. Rob, coming to you, another South Texas official has switched parties from the Democrats to the Republicans. Who is this and why did they switch?
So Clayburgh County Attorney Kira Talib Sanchez, first elected in 2014, announced at an event held by the Hispanic Republicans of Texas that she would be changing parties to the GOP. Clayburgh County in South Texas is 74% Latino and tends to lean Democratic, though it did support Donald Trump in 2020 by 50.3%. So a very slim majority there, but a majority. Sanchez said that she thinks that the Democratic Party has shifted too far to the political left and that it is no longer aligned with her values. She said that the Republicans are more aligned with her values of securing the border and keeping citizens safe. And she said that she feels many Hispanic Americans are Republican and don't even know it. That was her phrase from when she went, I believe that was when she went on Fox to talk about this switch. Sanchez joined two other South Texas officials in recently switching parties, including State Representatives Ryan Guillen and J.M. Lozano. Lozano's House district includes Clayburgh County.
There you go. Thank you, Rob. Cameron, back to you for the last story. There's been a lot happening with space news recently. Tell us about this new institute in Texas being started.
Yeah, I didn't know how to really word the intro question there, but you handled it good. Texas A&M has approved a $200 million investment into creating the Texas A&M Space Institute, and it will be established at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Reading through all the information on the story, they're saying the Institute is going to aid in the Artemis missions, which is going to be NASA's next attempt to put people on the moon. And yeah, there is a lot of space news going on because just recently India landed a probe onto the moon, and Russia made a similar attempt, but unfortunately their mission failed and it exploded.
It did reach the moon.
It blew up. It reached the moon, but it blew up. I've been reporting on the Texas Space Commission before. This was going to allocate funds, taxpayer funds, to helping develop the space industry here in Texas. And this is sort of the culmination of that. And Texas A&M, their campus already has 4 astronauts on their faculty. They've been working on over 300 different space projects. So this is just another step for Texas leading the way in aerodynamics and space travel.
One small step for man.
one giant leap for Texas A&M.
Wow, that was really well done. Dang. Exactly. Cameron,
Well
thank
played.
you. That was very well played. Let's move on to our tweetery section here. I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about here is the debate of Republican presidential nominees that happened this last Wednesday. Who wants to start? Does someone just want to volunteer to start with the tweetery?
I actually can. I saw something pretty funny today. So for those of y'all who did watch the debate, you saw when they asked, would you, I can't remember if it was, would you support Trump even if he was convicted, or would you pardon him? I can't remember which was which. But Vivek Ramaswamy's hand shot up like a rocket when they said, basically this question, would you support Trump? And the other candidates sort of looked around, saw him, and everybody slowly started raising their hands afterwards. I thought, and some guy just he tweeted a video of DeSantis looking over at Ramaswamy and then raising his hand and said, this is physically painful to watch. It was very entertaining.
Wow. Wait, so but there was a requirement to participate in the debate that the candidates pledged to support the Republican nominee. Isn't that correct? Is that the exact... Or explain to me what exactly it was.
There was something about a certain amount of donations, certain amount of support in a number of polls,
right.
And then they had to sign on to say they would support the eventual candidate. But there's nothing binding them to that. They can sign it and then get on stage, and we saw, they can waffle.
Yeah. And wasn't there one candidate who did not raise his hand?
Asa Hutchinson, yep.
There you go.
Former Arkansas governor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Fascinating. Hayden, do you have things to talk about with the debate? I'm shocked.
In 2015, when Donald Trump was first running for president, Megyn Kelly, then a Fox News anchor, asked Trump the famous war on women question that would kick off a year-long, I don't want to say feud, because it was mainly Trump going after Kelly and his supporters going after her, because that was a question that was pretty aggressive to ask a presidential candidate in a debate. But it's almost bizarre to watch a Fox News debate without Megyn Kelly or Trump on the stage, especially when he's a candidate for president. But Megyn Kelly tweeted, "With no clear winner, the winner was Trump. Nothing happened to change the dynamic of this race tonight." And throughout last night's debate, all I could think about while I was watching it is, it's so weird that Trump is not on the stage. And he skipped debates before. I think he skipped one during the 2015 cycle. Maybe he skipped more than that. But it's so interesting to see, after everything that happened between Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump, for her to come out after this debate that he wasn't a part of and say that he won the debate, even though he wasn't there. Because Tucker Carlson has had his own falling out with Fox News. Megyn Kelly left Fox News for NBC, and that show did not work out for her, and now she does independently a podcast. But I think her point is well taken, that the one candidate that is the most viable in this race was not even there. I said the other day, is this really a presidential debate? If the front runner, and it's not even close, by far he's the front runner in this race, if he's not even on the stage to answer questions, it almost seemed like a
race for second,
or almost a moot court competition up there. Because if the likelihood of any of those men being president is less than Trump being, or the likelihood of them being the nominee is so much less than Trump being the nominee at this point, especially with all these criminal indictments and Trump's mugshot about to be plastered all over the news. So I thought Megyn Kelly's point was well taken.
Any of those men or woman for president, Nikki Haley was on that stage.
I said men or women.
You said men.
I think I said
Rob
men or women.
Always does this. This is just Rob's MO. Which is good. He's an editor. Like he is here. His goal is to catch mistakes. Did I say men?
I thought I said people or candidates.
I believe you said men. That's what I heard. Now, I could be wrong, but I believe you said men. And the fact that I felt myself holding on to that comment means you probably did say men.
I apologize.
You could just say folks. That would be a pejorative.
No offense to Nikki Haley.
I'm sure she takes none. I'm sure she takes no offense to that.
And she did. She had a great debate performance as well. Yeah, she had some zingers. All of the candidates had their clips, but Haley had some pretty good debate prep.
Who would you guys say won the debate?
Cameron has a good take on this.
Well, I think I was talking last night with Rob as the debate was going down, and I think the cultural split in the party right now was crystallized in an exchange between Pence and Ramaswamy when Ramaswamy said we're in a cold cultural war, and Pence saw things completely opposite of that, being that the government needs to be the expression of the people. But that's why I sort of lean on the side of Vivek in that sense.
He had some big moments last night.
Trying to reestablish a new American identity, because it seems as though even in the Republican Party there is this split going on. Someone needs to lead the way through instead of going back to something. At least that's the way I see it. That's why I think Vivek came out on top.
Well, this is interesting. I'm looking at this breakdown of speaking time for each candidate. Mike Pence had the most, 12 minutes, 26 seconds. About a minute less was Vivek. Then Chris Christie. Chris Christie and Vivek were 1 second off. They've got the same amount of speaking time.
Mike Pence interrupted a lot. He cut into other people's time a lot.
He came out strong.
He did. He wasn't afraid to speak over the moderators, which I think we learned in 2015 that following the ground rules for the debate is not necessarily a winning strategy, because obviously Trump did not care at all about interrupting or going over time, and he was the nominee. So
I went back and watched some clips from the 2012 debate because I was thinking to myself, has it always been this shouty with this participatory of an audience with boos and cheers and hooting and hollering and all that? And no, there was applause. People did occasionally talk over each other, but I feel like there's been a new trying to think of the right word for it. It's very passionate. It's very excitable. It's very sort of,
audience engagement is in a different spot.
The eye catches when it goes on. It's like dun 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 dun. It's very just passionate.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Again, though, just having a Fox News debate without Ted Cruz or Trump on the stage felt bizarre. I didn't feel like I was watching a Fox News Republican presidential debate.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It didn't feel if the vibes were off.
The vibes were off. That's so funny.
And I'm not pulling for those two candidates and saying that I want them to be president. I'm just saying
it's been the hallmark of the last few cycles.
At the center of the GOP national stage for so long that it's weird to see them set this one out.
Interesting too that nobody's mentioned DeSantis so far. I think that says a lot about the debate last night.
He really wasn't that present, to be honest. He sort of hung back a little. I mean, Ramaswamy definitely took the brunt of people's attacks, which is interesting because he's third, and it seems like a lot of the people who've been there for a lot longer were attacking Ramaswamy a lot, but DeSantis I don't really think anybody at any point was really attacking or criticizing him for anything.
Which says a lot about how they perceive who the front runner is too.
Yeah. And I will say DeSantis seemed a little uncomfortable and stiff on the stage. He did not he did not seem like he was in the zone, so to speak. And that was surprising for me because he's usually good with commanding the stage and riling up an audience, but last night he just seemed a bit off of his rhythm.
Actually reminds me of one great quote from Daniel from last night where he said, everyone on Twitter says, man, that candidate I like is really sharp tonight.
So true. Brad, do you have any takeaways?
Rob just stole my thunder. I was going to say that, although I'll add one more thing. The flip side of that is the candidate I hate performed the worst. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so I saw a lot of that on Twitter last night. So really, I don't know what to think because that's where I get all my thoughts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Cameron said
you're
he
not
was
going to
watching.
say who you thought won the debate.
Doug Burgum.
I wanted you on record that you thought Doug Burgum won.
Asa Hutchinson did have the least amount of speaking time, and second to him was Doug Burgum. Yeah.
These debates, they help fundraising and
Yep.
maybe a slight bump in the polls immediately after, and then it all disappears.
Yeah.
And then we
think-
repeat it again for the next debate.
I think you're right. Absolutely. This is not going to change a lot of people's minds on who they're going to support. But I think the one question that really did split people on the stage and did give listeners and watchers information was the Ukraine funding question. Because
foreign policy seemed to be a big, which I mean, it has been so far. I think it's the differentiating factor for a lot of people who maybe have similar Republican beliefs, but that seemed to be a big part of contention last night.
I think, again, Ramaswamy is showing where the current thought is with the younger Republicans is when that question came up about would you continue funding, his hand went straight up in the air. Everyone... DeSantis, his hand eventually went up, but everyone else on the stage said they would continue sending aid to Ukraine. And so I think that really was the big split that gave information to the watchers.
It is interesting to me that somebody who has been running for president for months at this point would hesitate when asked a question like that, like a policy question when they're on a debate stage, not saying that the pressure wouldn't get to me if I was up there. Lord knows it would, and Lord knows I'm super glad I'm not there. So I can't say that I would do anything differently. But it is surprising that these candidates who have been groomed for this, who've been preparing, who have been on the campaign trail for months and asked all these policy questions would hesitate when on stage with other members of their party vying for the same nomination. It's pretty interesting.
Also, I will say, if you had pointed a gun at me yesterday morning and said, tell me who the governor of North Dakota was, I would have said, just shoot me. So I do think these debates can do a little bit for name ID. And to Brad's point, they can help with fundraising because people with money to give to political candidates can look at this and go, oh, he was U.S. attorney. Maybe he does know what he's doing. Or he had this experience I didn't know about, so I'll drop $1,000 on his candidacy. And so name ID and fundraising are huge with these debates. And at this stage in the game, I think that is more relevant than policy nuances.
And notably, too, Will Hurd, the Texan in the race that a lot of folks may be familiar with, former congressman, did not meet the threshold for making it to the debate stage and was not on stage.
I was disappointed that we didn't really get a huge fight over the UFO question.
Oh, dude, that was so funny when she asked him that question and Christy was like, "Oh, come on, man, I get the UFO question."
That's amazing. Yeah, I've admittedly only seen clips, so I'm learning a lot from y'all.
Christy seemed to get a lot of the sort of funniest moments between the UFO question, calling Vivek, saying that he sounds like Chat GPT.
Okay, that was fun. That was
like
a good
Obama
line.
2.0.
Yeah.
I mean, Christy sort of, I don't know, a lot of the sort of, I guess, funniest moments seem to revolve around him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brad, what was your tweetery? It was debate related.
Indeed it was. So, as I was sitting there preparing for the debate to start, I just switched over from the Little League World Series because that seemed to me more important to watch. But alas, I have a job that I kind of need to do. So I flipped over, and immediately I see an ad about the Paxton impeachment. And
On Fox, right before the
on
presidential
Fox
debate.
News, yep. I tweeted it out, so if you actually want to watch the ad, it's 30 seconds long, and you can see it there. But it's at the end, it urges viewers to call their state senators. And I'm not in Charles Schwartner's district, but I guess the media market, the Austin media market, was aimed at him for this, and it urged them to call and suggest he vote not to convict Paxton. And
So it's a pro-Paxton ad.
Pro-Paxton ad, yes. The PAC, the paid for by, is this thing called San Jacinto 2023, which is not registered with TEC or the FEC for that matter. Now, it's not a requirement depending on other circumstances like how they're formed and whether they're doing issue advocacy. Now, obviously or like campaign work, that can fall into a really gray area. So it's really, case by case on whether this has to be registered or not. But turns out the San Jacinto 2023 is a registered corporation, registered in Midlothian, Virginia, and I looked this up, I went to the Google Street View and found that it's at the law offices of Philip L. McDaniel in Midlothian, Virginia. I don't know how he found this, but Patrick Svitek at the Tribune found that the media buyer for this ad was the same media buyer as Paxton's political consulting firm. I think that's Axiom Strategies. So clearly there's a connection there. Somebody asked me if it violates the gag order. I highly doubt it, unless you can prove a real solid connection to Paxton himself or his political campaign. But the gag order does not apply to nameless PACs or faceless PACs generally. So,
yeah, that's First Amendment. You can't gag. You can't gag an outside party from talking about the impeachment.
Right. And, after Citizens United, the Supreme Court case, corporations are allowed to make political statements, and that's what this is. So, odds are we won't see any financials, who paid for it, all that, probably, but interesting that it's now, not only is it being aired on TV, but it was ahead of the GOP debate. Somebody knew who
a primetime
their
audience
was gonna be.
Yeah. Well, I will say too, it shows a lot about how the Paxton camp is thinking about, which has been, before the gag order, very apparent from his team of lawyers, like Hayden's talked about, where they're qualifying it as a criminal proceeding and saying that the attorney general will not show up to testify. And there have been, multiple different political analysts or pundits out there saying, yes, call your senators, like making it, that kind of proceeding, or the perception is that it's that kind of proceeding where you could call up your senator and influence them one way or another to vote on the behalf of their constituents.
You can do that in a criminal case.
You couldn't call up the jurors or the judge and say you need
maybe
to.
It is a political proceeding.
In fact, if you did, that would be grounds for mistrial if the jurors felt that they were being targeted.
Yeah. And then the messaging from the Senate, although they are the ones saying that this is a political proceeding, that this is not a criminal court or a civil court, there's no law that's being enforced here, it's a court of impeachment. They're the ones also saying, okay, we're going to review the evidence, focus on what's said in front of us, make votes according to whatever's presented in the chamber. It's just very interesting to see how it's characterized by the parties involved.
And they use the criminal case comparison when it suits them. Both sides do this. And they use the political trial comparison when it suits them.
Yep.
So it's just kind of, back and forth.
I think the grand jury analogy, where the House is the grand jury and the Senate's the real jury, that analogy has been so overused at this point, because at a certain point it just doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah.
And even if that is somewhat what happened in the House with the impeachment, this process is so much different than a criminal proceeding that there is a limit to how applicable all of that terminology is.
Well, and to assume too that just because senators have been very quiet about, either by gag order or before the gag order was instituted, about the proceedings, doesn't mean that they aren't influenced or being bombarded with emails or phone calls or anything along those lines. Like their Senate offices are still open, and their constituents are still able to call or email or contact their offices in any way, shape, or form, which is just not available when it is actually a criminal proceeding. So that's part of the deal as well.
All of this is very complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, folks, thank you for listening. Gentlemen, anything to add as I wrap us up here? Make sure to watch our podcast, or not watch our podcast, listen to our podcast. Lord knows you don't want to see
our voices on Spotify,
our little mugs every single day.
There is one public service announcement to make for everybody, which is that the Chick-fil-A Peach Milkshake is leaving this Saturday, August 26th. So remember, if you haven't gotten your peach milkshake yet, you need to get it. And we are not paid by Chick-fil-A.
Another one.
This is not an ad. It is a strong recommendation, but we are not paid for this advertisement.
The Texas Little League team is in the Final Four.
Whoa.
Let's go.
Needland, I think that's Needland or Nederland.
Cameron, did you do Little League?
Yeah.
Yeah. You would have had to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like there are a lot of baseball leagues, but
Needville,
not everyone
Texas.
does Little League. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it wasn't the Little League brand.
Okay, that's what I was.
We had a brand on the West Coast called Cal Ripken League.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, they will play in the. They set it up. They have two sides of the bracket. The international teams on one side, the U.S. teams on the other. So they're in the U.S. side championship game, and they will play Saturday at 3:30
Against who?
Eastern. Don't know yet because tonight.
What if it was California? That'd be funny.
Tonight, the team from the Northwest will play the team from the West. I think that's a California team.
Northwest. Woo. Is it Washington?
And the winner will advance.
Okay. There you
So
go.
there you go.
Some very important announcements. Thank you, gentlemen. Folks, we appreciate you listening to us each and every week, and we will catch you on next week's episode. Thank you to everyone for listening. If you enjoy our show, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want more of our stories, subscribe to The Texan at thetexan.news. Follow us on social media for the latest in Texas politics, and send any questions for our team to our mailbag by DMing us on Twitter or shooting an email to editor@thetexan.news. We are funded entirely by readers and listeners like you, so thank you again for your support. Tune in next week for another episode of our weekly roundup. God bless you, and God bless Texas.